Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Let's Write an Adventure, our ongoing live stream where we are creating a completely custom campaign in real time so that you can see all of the thoughts, ideas, techniques, and questions and considerations that go into creating a fully rendered D&D campaign using my own method. I'm RJ Kerr. I'm your host as always, and today we are going to be working on some legendary actions. We're going to be fine tuning them for a monster that we're working on, and we'll touch on that in a minute here. But before we get into that, the nitty gritty of all that, let me give you a quick update on where we are right now in case you're new to the stream or you haven't seen some of the most recent episodes here. So, as I mentioned, we are creating a custom campaign, and this has its own unique domain of dread. And to start that off, we're using a story circle structure. Now, when I say we're using a structure for this, I don't mean that we're coming up with a rigid plot. What I mean is we're giving ourselves as DMs a little bit of guidance in terms of what kinds of pieces and parts we should include in our adventure and how we might control the pacing a little bit here, or our campaign and how we might control the pacing a little bit here. And so we're thinking of this as sort of a guide to work off of, a thing to deviate from when necessary, but just to give us a little bit of shape as we're beginning to write the campaign. And as we've gone through and begun filling this out, we have done a fair amount. We have already figured out how our characters enter into this domain of dread through a portal that opens up on the blood moon. We have talked about what kind of personal motivations would draw them into this world. We have figured out where they land. In a shanty town called Darkport that sits on the edge of an inland sea. We've ascertained that this inland sea is a big part of this domain of dread. It used to be a thriving metropolis, the basin of a thriving metropolis that is now fallen into ruin and become flooded. We have figured out that there is an elemental evil that exists in this domain as the Dreadlord, and we're calling that Ovander. And we're still figuring out exactly how Ovander is going to interact with the PCs throughout the campaign. We figured out the very first adventure that the PCs will be drawn into, where they are kidnapped and briefly enslaved, and have to escape their captors, and in doing so, learn about the existence of a long lost artifact, and realize this artifact, that finding this artifact is their best bet for escaping this domain of dread alive. And so now we're working on a more open ended segment of the campaign, a place where the characters get proactive and they've got some clues they can follow, and they can really chart their path through the story, exploring where they want to explore, finding the clues they find, and leading those to the ultimate discovery of the artifact, which will make the midpoint of our campaign. And so to do this, we're using what's called a node structure style. And effectively, what it is that we each of these nodes that's in this sort of design is some sort of encounter, whether that's a simple encounter, a more complex encounter that has some complications to it, whether that's a mini dungeon, a full rendered dungeon, a heist, any of that kind of stuff. And we've done an amalgam of that sort of stuff so far. Um, but effectively, it's a moment in the story where the character, or the moment in the campaign where the characters have the opportunity to find more clues that lead them to other nodes. Hence, why I prefer to call the nodes investigative scenes. They're moments where the characters can discover things. They're places in the campaign where they can discover things. And the nice thing about this is the DMs. It gives us a little bit of structure to work with, so that we don't have to come up with everything on the fly. We don't have to come up with everything in between sessions. We can have some of this built out and be a little more prepared. But also, it gives our players an incredible amount of agency. There's all kinds of places they can go and all kinds of things they can do. So we were building out one of those that was a simple social encounter where the characters are talking to a retired monster hunter, and they are trying to get information about the location of this artifact. The monster hunter has an obsession with a monster that was never able to slay, and this has driven him a little bit mad. And so, of course, in his twilight years, he would like the characters to go hunt down this monster and destroy it for him. Now, this monster is unique in the sense that Uh, Anybody who does not possess a piece of the monster, like a claw, a piece of the carapace, even some blood of the creature, forgets it as soon as it leaves their sight. And this creature is actually a multitude of clones that get harder and harder to kill every time you take one out. And so we have this monster hunt side quest here. The characters can follow along or not. They can choose to ignore it if they want to. But we've got this unique monster we're building out for it. And we've done a lot of work on this already. Frankly, we've got. Let me go ahead and share the screen over here. You know, we've got all of the basics, all the things we would need to really run this creature. All of the hard bits, armor class, hit points, ability scores, all that kind of stuff. We've got a litany of traits for it, designing, how it's going to advance and how it's going to get stronger with every iteration. We figured out that it's all of its attacks and its actions here, and now we're working on legendary actions. We're adding legendary actions to the CR3 creature because it is designed to kind of solo against a group of NPCs, or a group of PCs rather. And so we want to level out the action economy a little bit so this doesn't just become a trivial sort of encounter for your players and characters. All right, before we jump into this, let me go ahead and remind everybody that this is an interactive live stream. So as you have thoughts, comments, questions, opinions, concerns, or anything else you want to talk about, jump in the chat. Let me know. I love hearing from you guys. You come up with some incredible ideas as we go through this. And if you're watching the recording of this, please feel free to do the same in the comments. I love hearing from you guys, even if you can't join us for the live stream itself. Okay, so with that being said, we'll check the chat here real quick before we start. And hey, looks like we got a bunch of hellos. Good to see you, Mr. Max. Good to see you, Ben. Always fun to have you guys in the stream. And so let's talk about legendary actions right now. And last time we did a little bit of work on this, we decided that our creature is going to have 3 legendary actions, and it can choose from them. Hey, Alex, thanks for joining us. And we're designing what those are. And we came up with a bunch of sort of raw ideas, and then whittled that down to 3. And so we decided that we were going to have this pounce mechanic to add a little mobility to the creature and to give it, the some surprising mobility. We talked about having this charm mechanic that kind of plays into the psychic element of this creature. And so we'll build that out today. And then we talked a little bit about how it might create some difficult terrain around it as well to limit some of the movement of the characters that are approaching it. So let's start with this charm lure mechanic. I think at its core, the idea of this is that this is akin to like a siren song, a harpy song, something along those lines. That this creature can emit and pull prey into it here. So let's figure out what we want to do with this. It's clearly a charm effect here, so the result would be the creature is charmed potentially. We know that from our CR that our DC is 13 for most things here. We still need to fill out some of that as we go through here. And we have this memory marked ability that we've built in. This idea that the creature instinctively prioritizes prey that can remember it, and it can know where these creatures are, so it can hunt. It can know where this prey is, and so it can hunt it. In this case, the PCs. And we know that advances later on to this dread mark thing, where it can create a frightened condition in marked creatures, memory marked creatures. So I think that since we want this to be a lure, it should probably affect creatures that are not affected by memory mark, meaning that they don't possess a piece of this creature. They can't remember it if they look away from it, because if we frighten them and they can't physically move towards the creature, well, then we've kind of nerfed this ability, this legendary action, and made it relatively unimportant. So I think we want to start there. Now, if you guys, of course, have other ideas than what I've got here, please jump in, let me know, give me your thoughts. So let's see here. Could say TK Monster. And TK Monster is, again, just an editorial mark to give us a placeholder for the name. We have picked out the name Borkora. And so effectively, as we're working on this, we'll control find and replace TK Monster with the proper name when we're done. Oh, hey, Jonathan. Thanks for joining us today. Good to see you. Happy Monday to you, too. All right, so TK Monster selects one creature it can see that is not affected by its memory marked trait. This creature makes a do we want to make this a wisdom saving throw, or do we want to make this a charisma saving throw? Traditionally, a lot of this stuff would be a wisdom saving throw. Sometimes I like to lean into the charisma aspect here, because one of the things that I think a lot of people misunderstand about the game, and the ability scores in particular, is that charisma is not so much just how slick somebody is, or how glib they are, how eloquent they are. It's really a measure of the force of their personality, and so we could say something like this is an effect that dominates that personality, and therefore could be a charisma saving throw. But then in the end, we can make the argument that it's more about overcoming the creature's senses and its sense of self-preservation, which would be a wisdom saving throw. Let's see. We've got a bunch of Constitution strength saving throws. We've got a wisdom saving throw for Dread Marked. I guess it probably should stay in line with that then, since it's a similar sort of function. So let's stick with wisdom, unless we come up with a good reason not to. A wisdom saving throw. Let's put our DC in here. DC 13, wisdom saving throw. We shouldn't say this. We should say the target creature. Keep our nomenclature consistent. The target creature makes a DC 13 wisdom saving throw. It's a failure. Target creature has the charmed condition. While charmed in this way, it must use all of its movement and action on its turn to move as close to TK Monster as possible. The target creature can repeat the saving throw at the end of each of its turns. And we should probably say that it has the charm condition for like 1 minute or something like that. Give it a duration. And the other thing that I would kind of kick around with this is whether or not we want to require the charm creature to use all of its movement, or all of its movement and its action, meaning that it would effectively dash in that direction. If we do that, we're effectively taking kind of taking over that character's turn, which there's pros and cons to that. Some players aren't a big fan of that. It's they, for example, why they don't like the stun condition a lot of ways. Some DMs don't like the stun condition for that same reason. In which case, if you fall into that camp, I'd say it just uses its movement. Um, I kind of am of the mind that if they're uh, yeah, I'm kind of the mind that if this the point is to draw it in, it would probably use its movement in action. That being said, we could, if we want to make this a little gentler, or perhaps make this more thematic in that it's kind of a slow pull, kind of a hypnotic compulsion. We could put a note in there that says it uses all its movement, and that while it's charmed in this fashion, it can't target the creature with um, any attack or spell that deals damage or something along those lines. Um, so yeah. Um, what do you guys think? What should we do here? I can go back and forth on this. Um, the more I look at this, the more I'm leaning towards not having consumed the action and more so have it um, just mean that the creature can't, this character can't target the creature. Or this, yeah, or can't target the monster. Because I'm kind of, yeah, because I'm kind of leaning into, I'm kind of, visualizing this slow pull, this kind of hypnotic lure, as opposed to like a mad dash towards the creature. Now that I think about it, so maybe that's what we'll do. Let's see here. We got a comment from Ben Elder in the chat. It says, "I think it helps envision how dangerous the creature is to cost the party a turn." Yeah, that's a good argument, and it is one creature, right? It's one target creature. Um, so why don't we keep it using the action, and let's do this instead. Let's say the target creature can repeat the saving throw at the end of each of its turns or whenever it takes damage. Um, so, it gives it a few more opportunities to kind of break this, um, which is fine considering it's going to close the distance pretty rapidly in this case, right? Like if it has to use its movement and its action, the average characters move 60 feet, or in that for each turn that it's charmed like this. So it's going to close the gap pretty quickly. Let's see here. Well, charmed in this way, we should probably say on its turn. Because we should specify when this takes place. Oh, we actually already said that, didn't we? On its turn. This is why we had it. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Cool. Yeah, Ben, I like that idea there. I think it gives. I think you're right. It really kind of hammers home this point early, and we do want to sell the concept that this is a very dangerous creature because we don't. Uh, well, frankly, I think the side quest loses something if, for whatever reason, the characters think this creature is trivial. Um, we want there to be a little bit of menace hanging in the air to give the side quest kind of the narrative gravitas that it's looking for. So yeah, I agree. I think that's good. Cool. So we got that knocked out. Now we have this difficult terrain effect that you guys suggested last time. And the original idea for this, uh, as I recall, was that it can kick up mud, it can tear up the ground a little bit, it can um, kind of you know depending on its environment, really kind of create uh, areas that are just kind of hard to um, traverse for other creatures. Um, there was the comment that maybe it only work in specific environments. Um, and I think you can go, there's two arguments to that. The way that I look at it. One is that, yeah, it makes sense narratively that, if it's kicking up Earth, that it needs to be, on ground, right? Like it can't be on like, hard stone flagstones of an old castle or something along those lines. It needs to have earth to kick up. The other bit there is that it uh, you know, that limits when it can use this legendary action. But again, we're building this one for a specific purpose, so I don't know that's a big deal. That just means that it's going to give us a little guidance on the kind of environments where this creature might be encountered, and it might be something the characters can use their advantage, luring it into places where it can't use this difficult terrain effect. So, let's see here. Uh, let's hear Mr. Max says if it's flinging mud on solid stone, that ain't mud. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So, it's I point this out not because it's a bad idea. I point it out because it is something that in the future when you're creating monsters like this, if you're creating something that you want to have a lot of use out of, and it's worthwhile considering because it takes a little while to create a monster. Now, it'll go by a lot faster for you guys when you do this on your own because we're kind of you know open source ideating and talking about each and every step instead of just doing it. But it does take some time and effort, and so you want to get as much mileage out of your monsters as possible. And so you want to consider the sorts of things that will limit their usability in other places. That being said, I don't think that that's going to be a problem with this. I think we have lots of opportunities to put this thing on ground and have it fling mud and dirt and that kind of stuff. And I think it is thematically kind of kind of a cool detail for this. So I think that's what we should do. So unless I hear any good argument to the contrary, I think that is what we'll knock out here. So um, let's see here. We could say TK monster. Um, uh, Tears up the earth surrounding it. To prevent maybe we won't do a description on this. We'll just write it out. We've got an idea on this. So we could say TK monster okay, tears up the earth around it, creating difficult terrain. While standing on dirt, mud, sand, or similarly loose terrain. It can create an area of difficult terrain that covers a 10-foot emanation from TK monster. Emanation. Okay. Actually, we'd probably say an area, we'll say, of rough ground. It covers a 10-foot emanation from the monster. This area counts as difficult terrain for all creatures except TK monster. Meaning it retains its mobility while this reduces mobility for other creatures. Cool. All right, so we've got another comment in the chat here from Mr. Mex. It says, having some of the actions only happen on certain terrain gives the monsters an advantage for being in its preferred environment. Exactly. So yeah, that's another consideration here. So the if you're looking to create a creature that is native to certain environments, yeah, I mean, go for it. So there's a time and a place to do this, and nothing is intrinsically wrong about giving it abilities that only work in certain environments. In fact, it can be very, very cool to do that. Hence why I think we're doing it here. It's just something to be aware of when you're creating a monster stat block. To know that to have an idea of kind of where you want to use these creatures, um, so that you either give them the versatility to be plunked in all kinds of different places, or you make them creatures that are really going to be masters of a certain environment. Um, cool. All right, so that is our three legendary actions knocked out here. So we can get rid of these other ones that we discarded. And last time we talked about some bonus actions and some reactions to give this thing a little bit of defense. One of the ideas we kicked around from Ben was this creature having the ability to respond to a threat actively. And we talked about moving in the initiative order, but that can get kind of complicated and add a little bit. One, it can add some task loading behind the screen, and two, um, the what is it? There is the possibility if you move it in the initiative order that it's going to have the opportunity to go twice, in a round. So attack, to have two turns before somebody else has their turn, that kind of thing, which will feel not fun to your players. So coming up with something that's more akin to like the parry ability that gives it a little bonus to its AC, um, can uh, uh, can be really helpful. And I think that's probably what we're going to do with this. Let's hear. Jonathan Frost says this thing is a xenomorph ranger, equivalent to Hunter's Mark and terrain focus. Yeah, I mean, it kind of is, to be completely honest with you. It is a pure sort of predator, and the kind of creature that that's going to haunt certain parts of this world. Um, so yeah, I mean, it worked out that way, but and it doesn't have to, in the future if we were to rebuild something like this. But I'm pretty happy with what we've done so far on this for what we're trying to accomplish with this particular creature. So let's knock out the last couple details here, and then we can work on this monster hunt side quest itself. So the reflective shell, we can say when TK monster is struck by an attack, it protects itself with its shell. Protects itself with its shell. The as a reaction, it gives itself, say, +5 to its AC. +5 to its AC. Potentially causing the attack to miss. Something along those lines. We could do this a couple different ways. We could have a smaller bonus to the AC, so something like +2 or +3, and we can make it last longer if we wanted to. 5 is a big boon, but it if we the way we have it written here is it only protects against that that particular attack. Um, Unless we could say gives itself a +5 AC2 until the end of its turn. We could do something like that. So if there's multiple attacks in a turn, it kind of gets the benefit of this, but it doesn't. If it gets it until the beginning of its next turn, well, then effectively its armor class is an 18 instead of a 13, which again changes the AC, or it changes the CR, the challenge rating for this creature. So I think this is a pretty easy way of doing this. And we may want to drop this from 5 to say 3 or something along those lines. Let's keep it at 5. Let's keep it at 5 for a minute. Let's do that. We can think about that. And then we have a reckless attack we want to toss in here. So let's see. We could say as a bonus action, TK monster can give itself advantage on attacks during its turn. When it does other attacks against TK monster, have advantage until the start of its next turn. Nice and simple. Cool. All right. The only other thing that we haven't really filled out in here, other than filling in some of the space holders we've used for DC and the TK monster stuff, is this idea of a pod linked pod linked effect. This idea that when one of the clone pods or eggs or whatever we're using for this is destroyed, the creature is subject to some kind of psychic effect. And we had kicked around a couple different ideas for this. Maybe taking damage, maybe it's kind of stunned. Maybe something lighter, maybe something more significant. So that when the characters are in their final confrontation with this creature and they're surrounded by these pods, they can destroy swaths of them and have some sort of effect on this creature. I really like this idea. I do want to do something for this. The more I think about it, but what I think will probably work best. And again, feel free to come up with your own ideas for this. But I think that when one or more of the pods is destroyed, the creature should get disadvantage on attack rolls. We could say it becomes disoriented and has disadvantage on, we could say attack rolls, or we can say D20 checks or something along those lines. Until the start of its, or until the end of its next turn, we could say something along those lines. And the reason I would say that is that, one, it doesn't take this thing like if we stunned it, for example, then it's losing a round, which is a big deal when it's the only monster, right? The other bit to that is that if it's damage, then this can become a one-shot kill, right? Because you've got dozens of these pods or eggs potentially, and you get one wizard who hops in there with a AOE, and blasts 10 of them in a chunk, and now all of a sudden you're doing huge amounts of damage to this creature in a single hit, even if it's not in the area of the AOE. So. But the disadvantage here, one, makes it harder for it to be effective, but also encourages it to use its reckless attack on its turn, meaning that it's gonna it's going to go into kind of a theoretically go into kind of a rage potentially, and give itself straight rolls to counteract the disadvantage, with advantage there, but also making it easier for it to hit, for other creatures to hit it here. Really kind of giving the players a good reason to spend their character's actions destroying these pods, without it being a completely OP kind of thing. So, unless there are any arguments to the contrary, and I would love to hear if you have other ideas, I think we'll run with a disadvantage bit here. So I'm going to start typing it out. Again, if you've got other thoughts, jump in the chat. We can always modify it. It's a beautiful thing about, writing. We can always make edits. So let's see your pod linked. When one or more clone pods are destroyed, should the creature have to make a saving throw? Or should this be an automatic effect? I kind of think maybe give the creature a saving throw. Yeah, okay, let's do that. Let's give it a saving throw. When one or more other clone pods are destroyed, TK monster must make a DC 13 Constitution saving throw. Let me say failure. We could say TK monster becomes disoriented. And let's see here, becomes disoriented, giving it disadvantage on D20 tests until the end of its next turn. Yeah, okay. I kind of like that, because it means that it's not an automatic sort of deal, meaning that the characters will have to make a choice as to whether or not they want to spend an action destroying pods, and potentially give this thing disadvantage, or whether they want to focus on it, knowing that if they just kill it, it's a new one's going to pop out of one of these pods. And so it incentivizes them to keep trying to destroy these pods, but doesn't make it just an automatic, this thing's always going to have disadvantage in the final confrontation sort of deal. Cool. All right. Well, that is our creature. I'm pretty happy with how this turns out. I would be very excited to run this thing, and see how it holds up. That being said, to run it, we need an adventure to run it in. So we should jump over to our where we've been building out this side quest and start rocking and rolling with this. I think at this point, probably can move all of this over to our side quest tab. Okay, so Orths asks, are these stats for its first form or last? Let me come back here. I remember several streams ago you wanted the first fight to be silly easy to beat. Yeah, so these stats are for for the most part, they're for all the forms, first and last. We've got the straight ability scores. That's not going to change. Armor class, hit points, that kind of deal. Um, the only thing that we have that's going to be changing is the the evolutions that go through this. Um, we could put a note in there and say that it gets these bonus actions or what have you on certain uh, at certain evolutionary points, that kind of deal. Same thing for we could give it legendary actions at certain points. I kind of think we should leave the legendary actions in there to maintain the action economy. Um, and yeah, I do remember that I was talking about it being the making the first fight on it pretty easy, and that's a good point because we have given it quite a bit of durability. Um, so, um, uh, bum. One thing we might want to put here is included in attack. So it doesn't read as though there's two saving throws it has to make when they get hit with slashing damage. So that's an interesting point. Yeah, so what do you think? Should we maybe bump some of these bonus actions and the reactions to later evolutions? Um, so maybe make the reckless attack part of the second evolution, and then the actually maybe we make the reflective shell part of the second evolution, and then the reckless attack maybe part of the fourth evolution as part of the dread marked here. Um, Something along the to pair with the dread mark, not part of the dread mark to pair with that. Um, yeah, let's do that. Let's do that. So let's say reflective shell. Let's say at the second evolution and all evolutions after. And then we can say at the starting at the fourth evolution. Actually, that's probably neater way to phrase that. So we'll say starting at the second evolution. Cool. That's a cleaner way to word that. Yeah, thanks for bringing that up, Orth. That is a really good point. We've been thinking about this thing in terms of long-term durability, but you're right. We do want that first fight um, to be nowhere near as difficult as the other fights are going to be. And we've done a lot here to make sure that that happens without really updating the challenge rating here, meaning we don't need to make an additional stat block. But I think it's a good thing to bump these in later. Plus, they'll be more surprising. So, cool. I like that idea. Thanks for bringing that up. So, with our last 15 minutes here, let's go ahead head over to our side quest and start working on this. So we put a bunch of, ideation down here. And we probably don't want to delete this just yet because we do want a description of this monster to give it, a vision on what this actually looks like. We've come up with some ideas, but we probably want to define, come up with a description of it so that when we run this, we've got something to go off of when we introduce the creature. But we can go ahead and start working on the various phases here. So we talked about tracking the beast, and we had done a little bit of work on that. So coming up with a starting point, you know, mouth of a rivers was a good idea. I think that's a good one to work with. We talked about some of the clues that uh, kind of begin uh, telling the characters that they're on the right track. And then we talked about a kind of a social encounter along the way to again kind of build the tension and give some context. Um, then a few more clues, and then we talked a little bit about the characters arriving in this um, this town um, that has been affected by this creature. Um, so the question then I ask on this is should should we move the location here, this make this the starting location, and then make the hunt start at the mouth of this river? Like they've got to come here first, um, and then move up the river, but then that doesn't necessarily make sense because they wouldn't. Well, maybe it does. What I was going to say is the people of this town don't remember this monster, right? We talked about that you know they have no memory of it. They just believe that they are, you know, that effectively they're being punished for some sort of, um, some sort of divine transgression, and that the characters are getting their starting point from the monster hunter. Um, so it might be easy enough for the monster hunter to say, "Hey, go to this town," and then beyond the town, there's the mouth of this river, and follow that up, until you find the creature's lair or something along those lines. So maybe we want to mix that around a little bit, um, and that could streamline some of this, and not having to come up with another band here. Um, so we can go back and forth on this. Let's see here. Jonathan Ross says, do they have to encounter the mystery of the effects, such as encountering a target running away from something only they can see before the exposition? Um, so technically, nothing should occur before the exposition. The exposition should set the scene for what's happening here. This is all, everything leading up to the actual first encounter is exposition. Uh, and and so the question is, really, how do we want to best build this tension? How do we want to um, best create this looming sense of dread? Um, and how do we do it with the fewest number of moving parts? Um, because if we're just repeating ourselves in different places, then that doesn't give the characters any new information. It doesn't feed the player's curiosity at all. It just becomes redundant. So the question is, in my mind, the question is, what is the value of having this encounter with another group of monster hunters or travelers, um, who can give them some information? We kind of spitballed the idea that they tell stories of people disappearing from this town, and that kind of warns them. Um, but uh, you know, but is that just going to be, is the information that then this hermit that lives outside of town, this doomsayer, it gives the PCs, is that just going to be a repetition of this information they've gleaned from this other band, or is there other information that we can impart here, um, and use that to determine which should come first? Um, obviously, things like the debris and the animal carcasses and stuff like that, that should come, once they're on the trail and hunting this thing. Um, But do we need more than one social encounter? And I'm not saying that we don't. The question is, what kind of information are we trying to deliver at this point? What kind of, and not necessarily information about the monster or the task at hand, but the situation. Um, you know, what are we? What do we want to build here? Um, your your bit in here, Jonathan, about encountering a target running away. That could be an interesting that could be an interesting final encounter just before they reach the monster, where you've got this scared individual who is fleeing through, fleeing down the river, and bumps into the characters, and they ask questions and that kind of thing, and then all of a sudden this person realizes they don't know why they're running, they don't know why they're scared, and now they feel kind of silly for it. Now they're saying, "Oh well, there was nothing there. I must have just gotten spooked. I must have just seen a shadow." And that can be a final clue to the characters that this creature is just up there. Um, so maybe we do it that way. Maybe we do it that way. So location first. So we do the town first. Move that up to the starting point, or just before the starting point of the actual tracking, and then we change this encounter to be uh, this fleeing individual, not a band, but a fleeing individual, either a monster hunter, or traveler, or whatever we have, who can uh, you know be kind of the final guidepost to tell the characters that they're almost to the right spot. Give them a little bit of anticipation. Um, yeah, I kind of like that. I kind of like that. So maybe we should do that. The Something to bear in mind when you were trying to build um, tension, narrative tension. So you're trying to build this atmosphere of menace. You're trying to make something potentially scary. Um, One of Alfred Hitchcock's rules for building fear in a story is that it's the monster is scariest when it's off screen, right? When you see the effects of it before you see it. Because as soon as you see it, it's a thing that can be handled, can be dealt with. But while it still lives in the imaginations of your players, it it could be anything. It could be infinitely powerful. It could be infinitely difficult. Um, and so, doing some of these interactions before they encounter the monster for the first time could do a lot to build the atmosphere we're looking for. Um, okay, yeah. So unless there's any objections to that, I think shuffling this around, like we talked about, uh, is probably the best way to go. So let's toss that there. Um, and then we can move this. Um, Actually, we'll move that to the end. We've got a whole bunch of little clue trails here, and these are useful. Um, um, let's see here. Mr. Mex says, would there be signs of attack for the party to question? Back of the stranger's shirt, clawed or torn? Oh, I think absolutely. 100% there should be signs that this, you know, that this individual has been through, has been in mortal danger recently. Because again, that's going to, I think that's going to kind of help build an understanding of this creature in the players' minds. It's going to flag that something is really off here when they stop this person who's fleeing, terrified. They're all torn up and, cut up, and their clothes are in tatters. And, and they're running down the river here, and the characters stop them and, see if they're okay, and what are they running from, and what's going on. And then all of a sudden, this NPC goes, "Oh, it must have been nothing. I don't, I don't know why I was running. I don't know why I was so scared." And they have to, because their memory has been altered by this creature, their brain starts rationalizing why they're so beat up. Oh, when there's like, what happened? I don't remember. I must have fallen down or something along those lines. So that you can have a few points that just don't add up. Um, to again kind of hint to your players and your characters that something nefarious is up ahead. Um, yeah. So yes, Mr. Max, to answer your question in my long-winded way, absolutely, I would absolutely do something like that. So let's edit this so that it does. So let's see here. Just before encountering TK monster for the first time, an NPC appears just before encountering Tiki Monster for the first time, an NPC appears fleeing from that direction. Their clothes are in tatters, and most of their equipment is lost. When stopped, they have no memory of why they were running or why they were so terrified. They look for plausible explanations to explain the state of their clothes and equipment, but these explanations don't quite add up. Yeah. Okay. I like that. We'll have to give this NPC a name and a little description, but we can give a name and one little tidbit about it in a stat block or something along those lines. Let's see here. Orth says, imagine if only one party member has a part of the monster so they could remember it. Now you got to persuasion check your own team so they believe it's real. You fail, and now the group thinks you're crazy as well. Yeah, you absolutely could play it that way, with a little bit of madness lean in there, so that the character, maybe they who remembers it, maybe they start questioning their own sanity as everybody else is like, no, that didn't happen. We never found the creature, something along those lines. There are I haven't checked in the new DMG. Let me take a look here real quick. In the 2014 DMG, there are tables about short and long term insanity, and you could potentially work that kind of effect in to the situation if you wanted to. If you wanted to make a kind of a little bit mind bending in the sense that the maybe that one character does start to question their own senses and their own sanity, much like our monster hunter did. And and you can give them some shorter term kind of psychological effects or even longer term stuff that kind of builds up over time. Absolutely. Um, um, yeah. So Mr. X is yeah trying to convince everyone they've killed it before. Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, what's likely to happen is your players are going to metagame a little bit when they do this, right? It's going to be natural that they kill the thing for the first time and everybody takes a chunk of it. Um, so everybody's gonna take a chunk of it. They're not gonna anticipate the things like the memory marked bit of it and what have you. Um, and so they're all gonna remember the creature um, after the first contact with it. And then we're going to give them a good reason to want to forget the creature with things like memory marked. That being said, one of the tactics that you could use, and sometimes it's worthwhile when you're writing these to put down some encounter tactics. Like when we first build out this first contact, um, we may try to make the creature run at a certain point when it's down to, uh, you know, uh, when it's down to low health, it might try to flee before it encounters you know, before the players sneak up on it or reach it. It might be trying to ambush them, that kind of deal. And so you have moments of like it flashing through and attacking, and then kind of dipping out and away. Um, and So that you do have these moments of characters getting injured and not being able to understand why or what happened. Um, yeah, we can absolutely build some tactics into that first encounter and subsequent encounters to really play with that memory with that memory loss effect. We wanted to. So let's see here, or it says like, what happens if a party member dies from that monster? And all but one has a part. Do they know the player died? Um, just blips or what? Yeah. So I think that they would likely know that the player is dead. Um, they probably come up with some sort of rationale as to why that happened that is not this monster. Um, you know, for example, there's the Phantasmal Force spell that talks about, there's hallucinations that only that creature can see, and it just rationalizes any outcomes that don't seem to track. Like, their example is, you make the illusion of a bridge over a chasm, and then it falls down. The creature goes to walk on the bridge, and it falls down through the chasm because it's never there, right? Well, the creature doesn't go, well, the bridge doesn't exist. They go, oh, well, a strong wind came in and pushed me off, or something along those lines. So it might be that they find one of the party members that's torn up by this creature. Perhaps even the only one who can remember it. And they go, oh, they must have been attacked by a bear, or oh, this looks like the work of gnolls, or something along those lines. Um, and and yeah, you can play it out that way. Um, you know, uh, this sort of creature is going to work best with players who are willing to really kind of lean into the role play on this. Um, but uh, but yeah, you can do a lot with that. I wouldn't say they just blip, because there's evidence of a dead body, right? But all kinds of rationales can come up with. Um, yeah, so to Mr. Mex's point, yeah, they don't forget the person, just the monster. They find their friend dead, yeah, and come up with reasons. Um, Jonathan Frost, looks like we have a mystery in our hands, gang. Yeah, you 100% could Scooby Doo this, and sometimes horror is a lot of fun to Scooby Doo. Um, Mr. Mex says, this monster sounds so freaking cool. Let me know if you need a playtester, lol. And Jonathan Frost says, get in the mystery machine. We have a mystery to solve. Yeah, absolutely. I will let you guys know if we want to run this through you know, do a little playtest or something like that. Maybe we set this up sometime so that we stream the playtest while we do it. We kind of do a playtest for this monster hunt adventure since it's relatively short, to try out our monsters sometime. Yeah, if you guys are interested in that, we can figure something out about that as we go. Um, It's about time to wrap up. So let me go ahead and put a pin here. I will mention that we've had a request to do another sort of DM workshop episode here, specifically about um, balancing combat encounters and building out combat encounters. If that is something that interests everybody, let me know if you have questions about building out combat encounters. Whether it's balancing them or how to make them more interesting or how to add a little bit of flavor to them or anything along those lines. Shoot me those questions and I can answer that into the outline that I'll work together for that. And I'll let you know when we have a more concrete date for that one. In the meantime, we will continue building our adventure here, Monster Hunt, our Monster Hunt adventure, this Wednesday during our regular time, same bat channel, as they say. So, if you have been enjoying this content, please like, subscribe, leave a comment, because all this helps the channel grow, helps more people find us, and keeps these chats as dynamic and interactive as they always are. So, thank you again for joining me tonight, and I look forward to seeing you all on Wednesday. Talk to you soon. Bye now.